thank you so much for being here with us today to talk about the new University of Chicago Certificate in Urban Science and Sustainable Development. I'm Diana Petty. I'm Associate Director at the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation, and I will be administering the certificate program out of the Mansueto Institute. And I'm also very pleased to introduce our Executive Director, Ann Dodge, as well as our inaugural Faculty Director, Luis Betancourt, who is also Professor in Ecology and Evolution. Before I turn it over to Luis to give an overview of the certificate program, a bit of quick housekeeping for this webinar. So we will be using the Q&A feature to answer your questions. That's a little box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Luis will be presenting several slides about the program, and then we'll follow with the Q&A period. You can feel free to put questions in the Q&A box as we go, though we will likely wait to respond until the Q&A portion. So thank you again. We're really excited to share more with you about this program. So Luis, I'll turn it over to you.
Right. Thank you, Diana. So I'm just going to do the usual swish here and bring the slides up. So those look good. So hello, everybody. We're very excited that you're all here joining this webinar, and also even more excited to start this new certificate in urban science sustainable development. So this is a new type of graduate program that goes together with other graduate programs. So I want to basically run you a little bit through what is the certificate and what motivates it, and therefore what your experience, if you participate in it, may be. And issues of eligibility and the requirements, and a little bit about the application process and deadline, which will be looming because those that participate will have to make certain choices of courses to take. And then we can open it up for any questions you have. And of course, we always remain at your disposal for contacts, and I'll give you those at the end. So as you may know, the university has a long tradition in urban science and many urban applications and initiatives. And also in increasingly the way we conceive thinking about human societies and cities. By urban, we mean cities of all sizes, not just big ones, is to do with broad societal objectives that have to do with sustainable development. So what's been happening over the last few years is really that there's a critical, exciting, and expanding field in this area that's developing. And there's in many ways new science, technology, and societal applications and needs that are coming to the fore. And so there's sort of a new body of knowledge that's assembling that's very interdisciplinary between more traditional disciplines that form the core of your graduate programs, but also there's new data, new technology, new ways of doing scholarship that are becoming interesting, and in some ways new questions. And as we came in sort of as an institute, but also as the university thinks about these areas, we saw that there was sort of a gap in the current more traditional graduate programs, though a few masters also have been quite innovative in creating opportunities in this area, in recognizing work in urban and sustainable development. So the idea of the certificate is really to meet a lot of interest from students and faculty. So we've been already in anticipation of now having a more formal certificate, working with many graduate students at the university and research projects in this area. And we want to start by recognizing that people are doing this work, including something that can go in their graduate transcripts and diplomas, and to create sort of a community, a home that is supported for this kind of work. And we also, as part of that, we want to improve sort of the graduate student experience in these interdisciplinary fields. So be able to create cohorts where, because the field is somewhat complex and forming, people can exchange knowledge, debate, form, in some sense, groups that stimulate work, but also support each other. And so the idea is, it's a bit the model at which, in which we work at the Mansueto Institute, but we like to create sort of groups, cohorts of people that share a mutual interest. And so I'll be telling you a little bit more about that. But the idea is to really create an experience where there are regular events for those of you that join the program. And apologize for that. And that those programs, let me just, sorry. You think of everything, but there's always something else. So, so the idea is to create an interdisciplinary graduate student and research experience across these fields. And this fits very much into the university's ambition and our own mission at the Institute here to create sort of a pathway for careers and research in this field. So the way these things work from the side of faculty, as you may know, is that we have essentially a faculty committee that will be the people that will look at your applications, but also maybe your advisors in some of this work. It's not limited to these, but these are people that committed to actually creating part of the syllabus and the supervision and so forth. So here are the names. I encourage you to look at the various names. It's alphabetical, and to look at who's closest to your current graduate program. And you can always contact me. I put my name there in bold, or Diana Petty, who can also answer questions. But it's possible that in coordination with your graduate program, you will have to deal with your current advisor or one of these faculty members. So don't be shy, feel free to contact us. The idea here is that we try to have essentially people from across the university. As you know, and as I was describing the field really relies on strong elements from the social sciences, the physical sciences, for example, in terms of built environment and in terms of computation and in terms of energy, and of course of health and biology in terms of climate, biodiversity, and health. So, so the idea is, again, that we have a faculty body that touches almost every part of the university. We're still enlarging potentially this faculty body, and we'll keep you posted. So we tried then to just ask the question, you know, from your perspective as a student, why would this be an attractive thing to do? So again, I already mentioned this a little bit, but part of the idea is to create a cohort experience in this interdisciplinary field where you can pick up knowledge, but also sort of a bit of companionship. You can debate issues, find collaborations, try to create synthesis across fields. And in doing that, the Institute and the faculty advisory body will try to promote either talks or events as part of the cohort experience. We can talk a little bit more about that if you're interested. This will be the first year. We have a few other cohorts associated with more specific themes, but the idea is that this is as part of your initiative, and your questions will form part of the people that we invite and the things that we will cover in terms of these cohort events. That you'll have more ready access to a community of urban scholars on campus. Again, there's urban activity all over campus in almost every school and many of our departments. And so this helps you in some sense do that, invite people, talk to them, see if they could advise some projects. We will include an element of professional development, whether you're a researcher, you know, how do you write more effective papers or presentations? How do you think about an academic career? But also in terms, particularly for those in master's programs, in terms of what may be career opportunities and jobs and so forth in this field. And sort of the tangible result is that you get on your transcript a proof of specialization, that you did graduate work in urban science and sustainable development, and this shows up in your student experience and certificate and paperwork from the University of Chicago. So the way this works, I already said quite a bit, but in many ways, this is just sort of something that stands along your current graduate program. So this is not a substitute for any graduate program. The idea is that we've already been working with many graduate students, particularly in certain masters, and in some PhD programs that are doing work that is either urban or to do with sustainable development or both. And we wanted essentially to recognize that they may get a PhD, for example, in sociology or physics or computer science and urban science. And likewise, for many of the students that pursuing masters that sometimes are more methodological, whether they have to do with policy or computer science or computation or social sciences, that they also have in some sense an objective that the certificate signals. So the idea is to create sort of an interdisciplinary horizontal structure across the university that you have access to, and in some ways you can commandeer for yourself and for your friends in the program. It supports also this idea of a student-driven experience where many of the questions and possibilities in this field are arising through a lot of activity here and other places. And so we would like you to drive a little bit of that, and promoting more interaction and coherence and standards exist at the university today. It exists only within departments. Particularly, we feel at the graduate level, though, of course, some of the master's programs in particular have been successful at doing that. So who's eligible? So the idea is that in principle, all graduate students at the University of Chicago, masters and PhDs, are eligible. But we imagine that the certificate, for the reasons I'm about to tell you, is actually makes sense for when you can elect courses that you can take as part of your studies. And so that typically happens in most master's programs in the second year, or it happens in the initial stage of your PhD program. So you will have to, I'll show you in a second, sort of a list of requirements, but the idea is that when you elect courses that are aligned with the objectives of the certificate. And the second element is that, so the idea is that you typically would apply in your second year of master's, and if you're a PhD, would typically apply as you, or around the time or before the time in which you're making your thesis proposal. There's a lot of variation among departments, and so it's the role of the faculty advisory committee to find a path that's appropriate for you in your program. So in order to participate in the certificate, we will have to check, this will be quite informal, but is necessary, that you have the blessing from your graduate program advisor, whether it's a formal advisor or somebody in charge of your program. And so you need to indicate that you've done that and you have their agreement. We've talked with a number of programs already, particularly programs like MSCAP and the Masters of Computational Social Sciences, where, as you'll see if you know those programs, the faculty members who direct those programs are in the advisory committee. So already the people in the advisory committee, in some sense, would give you that agreement, or at least could talk to your faculty advisor in related departments to obtain that. So the elements that are required is that you will have to elect and successfully complete 3 courses. These courses may be in a graduate program that exists already. We don't have an exhaustive list of all this, though we're trying to create a better list. But the idea is that you can propose that course and it can be approved as long as it's relevant, and we ask you to justify that briefly. You can also take, in some cases, advanced undergraduate courses that touch this, and that there are a number of those that are listed in the website. And some of the examples are there in the slide. You can read them. I'm not going to read them exactly, but they can be more conceptual or theoretical. They can also be more applied. But the idea is that it gives you at least some entry points that ask questions about how do we understand cities and urbanization, and how does this lead to processes of sustainable development, or does it? And the idea, the second element that's critical is that you will have to present a so-called a major research project. So to give you an example, if you are in a master's program, that's typically your thesis or part of your thesis project. And if you're in a PhD program, naturally that would be, for example, a chapter in your thesis, which may correspond to a research paper that you published. But there's some flexibility in that, but you need to have evidence to get a certificate at the University of Chicago that you've done research work in this area. So, and the third element already mentioned, hopefully it's more of a pleasure than an obligation, is really to be part of this cohort, to benefit from sort of your fellow graduate students who are typically not in the same, always in the same programs that you're in, and to interact with faculty and visitors in this area. So the application process, we're starting sort of this year. So in some sense, we want to provide you a little bit with some flexibility, but we also need to give you precise deadlines, yes, but also guidelines such that you don't waste your time and you get to what's needed quickly. So the idea is that you have to identify these 3 proposed courses. And you have to submit a statement, which is up to 750 words, and has to touch essentially on why you're interested in this field and what aspects of it are you interested in, how this relates to your academic or professional path and program, how will you identify your research project. If you know more about it, if you know already what it is, then you can say what it is. We don't expect that you know exactly the final product here. So the idea is that you will have a pathway to get there, but we will obviously be happy if you make appropriate changes as you think and work more towards that project. And then essentially what you hope for the program. So basically a very brief essay about a page and a half about these aspects of things, and just your CV and a brief professional bio. So, and the last element, as I mentioned, is just that you have talked to your advisor. So we're looking at a very short deadline, and the reason for this is essentially that we hope the application is not too onerous, but it gets to the essence of why you're interested in the program. But the idea is that you would apply at the time that you're choosing courses for this next term. So this is why it would be now, by September 15. We'll see how that works, and we may show a little bit of flexibility about that, but essentially we would like to be done by then, and then have a quick sort of turnaround to tell you whether you've been admitted into the program or not, and then you'd be part of the cohort, and we start talking about some activities and so forth, and also connect you with some of the most appropriate faculty. So that's more or less just a brief overview of the program. I hope that you're as excited as we are about this. We see it as a complement, both in terms of experience and in terms, of course, of research team opportunities and interdisciplinary work for graduate student work that you already do at the University of Chicago. But we also see it as a signal that you're doing work that is, has an element of novelty, that is kind of interdisciplinary, and that is addressing important issues in society, which is both important from the joy of doing science and research, but also possibly from your career development point of view. So I think I'll give it back to Diana, and we can move on to questions and answers and some discussion for those of you who may have them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Luis. We have a few questions coming in, and folks should feel free to continue dropping questions into the Q&A. A few questions about the size of the cohort that we anticipate building for this academic year.
Great. Do you want me to answer, Diana?
Go for it, yeah.
So we discussed this a little bit. What we want obviously to have as many people as possible. But also we want to create a wonderful experience for you in this program, and a program that makes sense and can be managed. So we've been trying to scope what that might be, but so I don't want to give you a hard number, but we think that a few tens of people, so not many fews, just a few, is typically the kind of program that we could support. But in general, I think that most of you that have a genuine interest and an idea of what you want to do here will have a very good chance with your submission to be part of this initial cohort. Do you want to add anything, Diana? That's more or less the politician answer I can give you today. But I hope you'll trust that we'll make the best to include you and to create a wonderful experience.
Yes, I think that's right. And just to reiterate what Luis just mentioned, this is the inaugural cohort. So we are certainly, we are putting plans in place, but we are also endeavoring, I think, to adjust and adapt based on the level of interest and response, and sort of shape things a bit as we move forward. A few other questions about the kind of major research project, wondering if a graduate degree program doesn't require a thesis, what are the sort of other options that students can pursue for a major research project that would fit with the certificate?
So, this will be part of coordinating your proposal with also the judgment from faculty. So we will have faculty in your program that will allow us to judge what you're proposing. But the idea is that you spend some time on a project or an experience. It could almost be an internship, as long as sort of there's a product and a narrative for a project that would describe, essentially has to be a coherent project in this area. And you have to be able to present that path, that coherent path, and sort of the results of their experience at our, I mentioned that, but only in passing. That will be a spring symposium where every member of the cohort has to present essentially their their major project. And you'll be judged, at least for that part of the certificate, in terms of completing the requirements by the success of that presentation. So there's some flexibility there. It's rare that it's a little rarer that programs don't have something like a project, but if they do, we will take obviously that into account. So bear in mind that you always get the certificate with your graduate program that you're in, and so the experience will be commensurate with that program. But that's the primary degree that you get.
Great. Several questions also about the course requirements. So I'm going to answer one quickly that I think will be fairly straightforward, and then sort of combine a few of the others. Is there a list of courses in different departments that one can browse through to make a decision about the electives that would qualify for the certificate? This is a great question. So there's two places that are new that you can find this. One, in the certificate application in the form to select your courses, there is a drop down that's pre-populated with several courses from graduate program, across graduate programs, I should say, that we've identified that are in alignment with the certificate program. You can propose other courses, but there is a predefined drop down of options to peruse. That same list of predefined options is newly on the Mansueto website. We have just launched a new curriculum page. You can find it on the top hand navigation on our homepage. Just click curriculum, and there's a list, that same list of courses from the application is there. So I hope that helps. There's then a few questions about, so just about courses in general. Let me read a few of these, Luis, and then I think you can respond. If you TA for a course, could you count that towards one of the 3 course requirements? Second question is, I have already completed all 3 courses required for the certificate. Does it change anything that goes into my application? Maybe let's start with those.
So I think that to the extent that you have completed the courses and have proof of that, those could be counted. I think that to the extent that you TA we hadn't thought about that one. Presumably, yes, that could be counted as well. But I would put that question to the faculty committee, but I expect that the answer would be yes. So, but again, we're happy to accommodate some variation, but the idea is that you have to have mastered that material and have thought about it and successfully completed it. So if you've done it as a TA, presumably you've done that.
Can I jump in with something quickly? When you are submitting your application and you tell us that you've already taken 3 courses from our suggested list, or you've already taken 3 courses that you think should apply, it is on you to demonstrate in your statement that that is part of a cohesive vision around what you want your urban science curriculum to look like. So it's entirely possible that you were already interested and immersed in the field, and then this opportunity came along, and you can sort of make a good case for that. But I would, really encourage all of you to put a lot of thought into your statement at that point.
I think, so last question about courses, that's a little bit also about just like the trajectory of the certificate, not just this year, but as it evolves and matures moving forward. Are you planning on developing a specific list of courses for the certificate? What would you suggest to look at to pick the 3 courses to apply for the certificate? So I think, again, on the certificate application page and on the Mansueto homepage, you can find curriculum that includes pre-identified courses that fit with the certificate. But in the long range, Luis, I'd love for you to speak to this, as it's certainly been a key topic of conversation amongst the faculty committee.
So for us in the faculty committee, we are looking at this also as a need and a bit of an obligation to also be able to create new graduate courses that would bridge materials across departments that would serve the purpose of the certificate. So we're actively talking about this, and we expect there'll be developments in which we will be creating such courses that will add to the list soon. But at the moment, we don't have, there'll be new courses coming up that are not listed yet and exist, but you could certainly express interest in a course with certain materials, particularly from the point of view of the program you're already in. And you know, that gives us more reason to create a course in that, covering that material. So there'll be more. It's not like it's setting in stone, but there's a bit of a chicken and egg issue in which we are also motivated by your interest, and we'll create courses in response to some of the issues that you're asking about. But there'll be more soon. So I can just not commit that that person that I know who said is going to do this wonderful course is really going to do it, but it's coming.
Great. Another, I think, kind of exciting question. What sort of speakers and events can you anticipate will occur over the course of the year? Right.
So, so this depends a little bit. I think on the one hand, you know, it's a very rich and large field. And I think that as you join the cohort, we'll have a few initial meetings to gauge sort of the range of problems and interests that are common to most of you. I have my opinion about who are exciting speakers and themes, but so there are a range of speakers that both in the departments and through events at the Mansueto Institute already are happening, and you're very welcome to do that. But I think we'll create a format where you as a cohort can also try to identify either a theme or a speaker that we'll invite and bring in. So there's an opportunity for, as I mentioned in the slides, also student directed. You know, you can have sort of your dream speaker, or at least we can try to have that person if there's agreement in the cohort. But there will also be a number of activities. So we have you know, I'm not giving you a specific answer also because there's a range of themes that already have going. We have a few already talks that will happen in the next few months on design, on housing, on international sustainable development, on the COVID situation and so forth. So there'll be an ongoing set of things that you're attending if you would like, but then there'll be specific, probably 2 events during the year that are more specific to the cohort that we can identify what is the best combination of speakers. I have to say that all the people in the graduate committee already said that they wanted to be speakers to your cohort. So we can start there, but we can also have sort of an outside speaker if we wish to.
Great. So also several questions kind of under the category of faculty advising. This is a good one. I think I could take a stab at answering. What sort of conversation should one have with their faculty advisor before we apply for the certificate? Also, since there's limited time between now and the application deadline, how does one go about that? I can take a crack and then Luis and Anne please in as well. This is a great question. So essentially our guidance here is that we want you, since all of you are already in degree programs and you are pursuing a course of study that is in alignment with that degree program, our guidance here is just that whatever faculty member you are working with most closely, or if it is the kind of leadership of your program at large, we just want you to be sure and have a conversation with that person that your pursuit of this certificate is in alignment with the course of study that you're already doing as part of your degree program. We want to make sure that there's no surprises or unexpected pitfalls that a faculty member might perceive by you participating in this certificate program. So in a way, this is an informal conversation. This isn't akin to a letter of recommendation or even you know, them approving your application. We really just want to make sure that you and the faculty member you're working most closely with are on the same page about the certificate program and how it will integrate into your existing degree program. Luis and Anne, anything to add?
Yeah, and the idea is that, again, the idea of the certificate is not to replace or substitute something at the program, but it may open some windows and possibilities that enrich your current program. So we've talked a lot with leadership in many of the master's programs at the university, not all of them, because there are a number of them, but we're in touch with many people, and we can certainly do that on your behalf to some extent. But you need to also do some of those conversations. And then also at the PhD level, of course, there's a longer timeline. But as you can also contact somebody in the advisory committee if your department there is listed. But if it's not listed, we're also happy to help mediate that.
Great. The other sort of categorical question about faculty interaction is with regards to the major research project. So a couple questions here. If we have a few ideas for the major research project, or the idea for our research project is very broad, would we be able to get faculty help to narrow it down? If yes, should that be before we apply or after we've been admitted? And then similarly, or I guess related, in the MPP program, we don't have a thesis requirement. Will there be any faculty advisor if we plan to pursue a research project of our own interest?
Right. I'll start with the MPP program because that's part of it was one of the programs that we kind of used as our mental model to think about how this would work. So we've talked to your leadership, and so they know that this is a possibility in some of your paths. So in some sense, I think that that there's a possibility there, but we're happy to bridge that gap a little bit if need be. But you have to identify some sort of project or experience that would be relevant here. In terms of the first part of the question, it's really about how do you shape a research project. I would encourage you, given sort of the timeline, that if you have an idea or an area of interest that you would apply, and that you can shape that project as in the months ahead. So you could count on the help from people in the advisory committee, but also the idea would be to involve others that we can help you identify to some extent. We'll have to, people will have different availability and so forth, but that's how graduate programs work, is to try to find people that are interested in what you're interested in and then help you develop it.
I also just want to let people know that we do understand that you will make a proposal at the beginning of your application, and then the project is likely going to change, grow, and deepen. And we've talked about having a sort of a part of the application be that as you get closer to the presentation to the faculty jury, there will be another opportunity to review what your project is with the Mansueto team, as well as in conjunction with your advisor, just to make sure that we that it is consonant with the vision for the degree. So it is great because it's such a short year to come in with a sense of what you want to do, and who will advise you. But we do understand that that might change a bit as you take more courses and meet more people.
Great. Sorry, I'm just reading some of the questions live. So thank you for all your submissions. These are really helpful. We'll do a quick one that's a little broader than just the certificate, but certainly relevant. What do we mean by urban science rather than studies or other framings? And does that connote in any way certain approaches or genealogies?
So urban science here means something very broad, but nevertheless, the idea is to study, cities with evidence in an evidence-based way. That doesn't mean necessarily a lot of data, but it means that there's some evidence and there's some, framework, a logical framework for what is happening in cities. So it can be quite broad as long as a faculty member at the university sees it as being appropriate. But part of the term urban science, just a little bit beyond answering that in that way, is being used essentially to denote this interdisciplinary area where you look at cities essentially more from a more systematic point of view. That incorporates social aspects and human aspects of cities, but also aspects that are environmental, to do with biology and life in cities, and also physical. So it's at the boundary of these fields and a more systemic approach to cities that typically one distinguishes urban science for urban studies, which tends to have more of pedigree in the humanities and to some extent the social sciences. But there's a lot of room there for projects in traditional urban studies, of course, to be relevant here.
Great, wonderful. I guess this is, again, kind of piggybacking on this a bit. Another question is, could you talk a little bit about the work generally at the Mansueto Institute, which is certainly a good question to respond to.
So we could talk about that for a long time, so I apologize, I'm not going to do quite that. But so we've been created as an institute essentially to promote both interaction within the university, but also a bit of a strategic direction precisely in these areas. How do we study in terms of scholarship and research cities and process of urbanization, so at all scales, and essentially as an interdisciplinary area that brings together, you know, elements from these many different areas, from the life sciences, from physical sciences and computation, of course, from the humanities and social sciences. So it's the area of intersection is not just a mixture of ideas, it's actually an area of synthesis where you need to explain, you know, certain aspects of how people live and work, and things change in cities that require these things coming together. So it's more than observational. It has the aspiration to identify also how things work and how those ideas influence then outcomes and policies. And he fits very much in sort of this time. There's sort of a zeitgeist to this that I think is important. At least I use it a lot, motivating myself, which is that you often hear this, that the world just became urban. So in some sense, you can look at almost any nation on earth and understand it to some extent in terms of cities and the change that cities of all sizes are creating. There's an immense new component of data and technology that plays a role for good and bad. And there's an opportunity to learn from comparative studies across many different contexts. So comparing cities across time and across national contexts. So that's all part of sort of a framework for understanding cities and urbanization in a more interdisciplinary, but also more generative way. So we're dedicated to all that, and the certificate is in some sense allowing you and recognizing what you do in that area in terms of research and projects and coursework.
Great. So another question about the certificate. What measures are being taken to make sure that the program is being led by and includes the voices of people of color and marginalized groups? Luis, I'll let you respond to that, but do want to mention it's worth for folks to scan the list of faculty committee members who are involved in this certificate. That does include faculty of color. In several instances, and so we encourage folks to look at those leaders and their specific areas of expertise as well.
So obviously, we're very totally committed to a very open and inclusive environment in everything we do, and we do recognize that there's obviously a history of policy and some scholarship in these areas that you know has been hurtful and unfair and unjust in many ways. But this is also part of, we work a lot in terms of bringing in and working with communities and organizations that very much produce knowledge from the ground up. They express the aspirations of individuals and people and communities. And this is very much part of urban science. There's also the idea that you're co-producing the knowledge about, you know, our own experience in life with people in different constituencies, including people in minorities and of course, people of color. So that's very much part of how it works and how we like to work. And we would like, of course, to continue to do better in every one of our programs. And so it's very much our concern to do well in these directions.
Great. So I think this is our last question, though anybody listening should obviously drop in anything that we haven't clarified or that they would still like to know into the Q&A now. And this is not about the certificate. Another way to get involved with the Mansueto Institute is the Kreisman Graduate Fellows. Can you talk a bit about it? And I'm happy to share about this. This is our third cohort of Kreisman Fellows. The Kreisman Initiative on Housing, Law, and Policy is really geared towards bringing the University of Chicago's perspective into the sphere of policy debate and discussion around housing, which obviously is incredibly broad and multifaceted. And so this cohort is, like the certificate, highly interdisciplinary. Over the past several years of the fellowship, we've had students from Booth and Harris, the law school, and several PhD programs across the social sciences. Essentially, it's primarily a professional development based fellowship. So it's really an opportunity for the graduate fellows to come together with local and national housing leaders and thinkers to discuss kind of prescient issues facing the sphere of housing policy and practice. And they also go through several workshops with that are done by UChicago grad that are geared towards kind of skill building and being able to turn their each student's unique areas of expertise and interest into kind of actionable impact in the sphere of housing through their future careers, whether it's housing practice or it's more research in nature. And so it's a year-long, it spans one academic year, and fellows also receive a $4,000 award that we essentially hope will bolster them to pursue some kind of professional or research experience of their own design that they might not have otherwise had the resources and the bandwidth to pursue. So we've had fellows do internships at local housing service providers. We've had fellows design their own research projects around any number of topics. We've had kind of foreclosures and evictions most recently. We've had folks study spatial access at public housing facilities to other types of community services. So it really runs the gamut, and it's an interesting kind of melting pot to have students who have legal training, real estate background, financial background, and then obviously public policy and kind of computational skills come together and sort of think broadly and intersectionally about ways to make improvements to housing stability and sustainability. Not just in the US, there has historically been a bit of a US focus to the fellowship, but they certainly look at issues of housing and kind of different models to housing in other countries as well. There's been many fellows who specialize, particularly in Latin America, and have brought that wisdom and that knowledge to the cohorts. So hopefully that tells you a bit. And those applications, I will say, are due September 23rd if you're interested in the Kreisman Fellowship, also on our webpage, our homepage. I saw one other question that, Anne, you might have responded to in written form. It was also about this juxtaposition of domestic versus international.
That's an easy one. Please look internationally. We are very excited in general about international development and urbanization as a field where there is an opportunity for so much impact. So yes, don't feel limited by the context that you are in geographically.
Yeah, an area of great interest is, of course, international comparisons and comparative studies. And that gives you a lot of scope to understand your own reality, but also the process of development and change. So that's very interesting, particularly in places that are urbanizing very quickly and that have their own challenges for that, but also are becoming very important, maybe the central places for what happens, for example, with climate change.
Great.
So we have a lot of work in India, in some aspects of China, in countries in Africa, also in Latin America. So there, we could go down the list and be more specific, but definitely as an institute, we work very much globally, and we try to have connections and research projects that touch every part of the world.
Great. Okay, I think for the moment that concludes our Q&A. I will put my email in the chat as well. But you should feel free to email me. My email is dpetty@uchicago.edu if you do have follow-up questions. And again, just to reiterate, the certificate application is due at midnight on Monday, September 15th, so just under a week from now. And it is available via the Mansueto Institute homepage, which is miurban.uchicago.edu. And I believe my colleague Heidi has dropped that link in the chat as well. Luis and Anne, any other kind of closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to go back to the beginning. I think I want to express how exciting this area is. It's an area that requires knowledge from many different areas, but also, as we discussed, all the way from communities and individuals with an urban experience to, of course, larger scales, where we think about what nations or even happens globally. And so it does require a whole community of practice and interaction to make us work at high levels, but also to allow each one of our experience as researchers and students to be wonderful and productive. And so this is really what we're producing here in Spirit. And I think it will be fun, and it will be very interesting and productive and maybe transformative to be part of these cohorts. So we're excited on our ends to be able to host the cohort and in some ways promote a lot of this work at the university, and we hope you'll join us. Thank you.
We did just get one other, but I think this could be maybe also akin to kind of closing thoughts. I'm happy to say, is there any advice for a first-year master's student when preparing for applying next year? So when they're rising into the second or third year of, I guess, second year of their program. I think it's probably the same as advice we would give to those applying now, which is really that, you know, I think our hope is certainly, as Luis has been mentioning, to bring together a creative and enthusiastic interdisciplinary group of urbanists who are thinking about all sorts of issues related to cities of the future. But I think also for each of you individually, putting some thought into what your sort of long range academic and professional goals are, and how a sort of holistic blend of courses related to urban science and sustainable development, as well as a major research project or internship experience in that space, could best serve your long range kind of career trajectory. Because in some, you know, anyone who participates in the certificate program will be able to avail themselves of a variety of different faculty resources and mentors and guides, but much of it will be based around your inherent interests in the space of sustainable development and where you see yourself going after your degree program. So I think putting some thought into that so that you can make the most of your time in the certificate and really get a lot out of not only the resources of the Mansueto Institute and all the faculty committee, but also your peers who are in the cohort with you, would be at least my thoughts. But Anne and Luis.
Yeah, but there's a lot happening at the university, both activities, of course, that we as an institute promote and organize, but also across the university with UChicago Urban and increasingly in these areas. So I think since you have a little bit more time, just think about what are your areas of interest and what would be an interesting project for you, and also coursework, and stay in touch because there'll be things happening, and I think that will help you form your plan and opinion.
And I think everyone who is still here, thank you for staying. Mansueto has a whole range of public programming that is available to you. That outside of the certificate, we have a speaker series, we have lunch speaker series. You know, everything is kind of crazy this year, but we are doing the best we can to maintain an active kind of program to engage students and the public. So please just come to all our events that you can, and that will help you really immerse yourself in some of the thinking, some of the language, and also help you to connect to faculty and researchers whose work might be really compelling to you and help you set your own path.
Great. I'm just responding to one more in the Q&A chat box. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you to you all. We certainly hope to hear more from you soon. And again, please feel free to follow up with via email with any additional questions. So with that, we will conclude this webinar. Thank you, Luis and Anne, as always, and stay well and take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon. Take care.